Alright, let's get this out of the way. I am an Elder Scrolls casual. Which is not to say I haven't had my fair share of time exploring the vast and often broken land of Tamriel, but compared to most gamers, I feel like my time invested is pretty lacking. Now, I played Skyrim a lot back in high school, but seeing as everyone and their grandmas played Skyrim, I don't feel like that really means much. Then there's Oblivion, where I spent way too much of my time in the character creator, desperately trying to make my character not look like a complete flippin' doofus. And finally there's Morrowind, where I made some decent progress before I got lost in the city of Vivec for so long that eventually I just lost the will to go on. And that's my Elder Scrolls experience. And for a couple years now, I've been pretty content with that. It's a cool series, it really is, but something about open world games just doesn't grab me the way it did when I was younger. And as someone who really enjoys combat in games, let's just say this series leaves something to be desired. However, for the longest time, the Elder Scrolls 2 Daggerfall has, let's just say, spurred my interest. You see, on the surface, Daggerfall is a bizarre looking game, and I mean that in the most literal sense. What the hell is that? Now, despite watching many videos on the Elder Scrolls games and hearing people talk about them for years, I somehow know virtually nothing about this game, except that it's big. Like, comically big. Like, so big that it makes Skyrim's map look like a stamp. Besides that though, I don't know a thing about it. I don't know how difficult it is, I don't know if a guide is basically required, and most importantly, I don't even know if people like it. For all I know, it might actually be the best Elder Scrolls game. Is it likely? Probably not, but I knew playing it would be the best way to find out for myself. Now first things first, we gotta make our character. The game starts out with a large map of Tamriel, split up into 9 different provinces, giving you an opportunity to pick which one you're from, which determines your race. Naturally, I chose the Black Marsh, because the Argonians are the definitive best. Then you can answer a series of questions to find out which class fits you best, which I opted out of and just chose the Warrior class, because I already know that I'm the hit moving things with big swords until they stop moving kinda player. Then you can answer a series of questions to determine your character's background, or have the game do it for you. I let the game do it for me because I have nothing but faith in it. After that, I got a chance to give our soon-to-be hero a name, and I decided on that guy, because I can already tell he's gonna be that guy. Next, I got the opportunity to choose his appearance, and after some heavy deliberation, I decided on the one that made him look inherently evil, just so we can prove that your appearance does not decide your destiny. Then I got the chance to put some bonus points into stats of my choosing, which all went into strength. I also got the chance to put some bonus points into some skills of my choosing, all of which went into combat skills, because it's all I'll ever need. Finally, you're asked to choose the game speed, and naturally, I chose the fastest, because I'm not a coward. The game starts with a live-action cutscene, where you're summoned to a secret meeting with the Emperor, where you're tasked with going to Daggerfall to defeat the spirit of King Lysandus, who died in battle and still haunts the land. He also mentions that he sent a very personal letter to the Queen of Daggerfall that apparently never arrived, and adds that he would really appreciate it if you could track it down and destroy it. I'm gonna be honest, I forgot about both these tasks like 5 minutes later, which is fine, because who really cares about the main quest in an Elder Scrolls game anyway? Upon getting into the actual game, you're informed that on your way to Daggerfall, your boat was destroyed in a storm, you had to swim to shore, and then you took shelter in a cave, which was then sealed behind you with a mudslide. What a great start to this adventure. Anyway, first things first is getting out of this cave. I looked around the room I was in to see if there was anything useful, and immediately saw a pile of human bones, so that was reassuring. But anywho, I figured those guys probably just weren't as capable as me, and started heading on my way for all of 10 seconds before running into a giant rat and realized I didn't know how to fight. I figured out how to pull out my weapon, but for the life of me could not figure out how to swing it. Turns out by default you had to hold right click and drag the camera in the direction you want to swing, and I hated that, so I immediately switched it to just clicking. Anyway, killed the rat and kept going. A few seconds later I ran into a bat, but now that I knew how to use my weapon, he didn't pose much of a threat. I was feeling pretty confident to say the least. After that, I entered a room that housed a little green demon, and for some reason my sword was completely ineffective and I couldn't hurt it. I then proceeded to panic and run in circles for the next 30 seconds while he zapped me with lightning magic repeatedly. I died. The Emperor sent me to Daggerfall as his personal champion, and I lasted about 3 minutes. Also, I hadn't saved, so I had to go through the entire character creation process again. Lucky me. Anyway, I started again, remembered to save this time, and then I killed the rat, killed the bat, did not engage with the little demon, killed another rat, killed another bat, then found a half-naked dude hanging out by himself, and almost got killed again, but managed to take him out, and then took the little clothing he had on for myself. And on the verge of death, I made another save. I then entered a large room with a giant staircase and a bat. I took care of the bat with no problems and felt pretty good about myself, before realizing he was accompanied by a skeleton warrior who I was completely helpless against. I died again. Luckily, having just saved, I started back in the previous room and decided to go down a different path, which was going pretty well until I ran into a whole-ass bear, which honestly wasn't that hard. But the assassin that showed up immediately after I died again. Anyway, I loaded the save and then went back the same way, ran past the assassin and a bat, and then entered a new room where I was instantly killed by another little demon. I died again. So I loaded the save again, decided to make a break for the stairs this time, turned the corner, went up some other stairs, entered a new door, and somehow ended up on the other side of the same room with the same little demon. I died again. So I decided once again to go up the stairs, but this time went down a different corridor and ended up in some room with no enemies and some gold. It was quite refreshing to say the least. It was at this point that I remembered the Elder Scrolls rest mechanic, where when you're not surrounded by enemies, you can pass time quickly and regain your health. Not sure how I forgot about that. Probably would have been helpful earlier, but it turns out it didn't matter anyway, because my rest was then interrupted by some random archer. I died again. That said though, now knowing how to get back to full health, I made my way back to the stairs with a lot more confidence. For some reason the skeleton was much more fixated on killing the bat than it was me, which was a welcome change. After they were both dead, I made a new save on the stairs and found out from just pressing random buttons that the game has a 3D map of everywhere in the dungeon you've explored, which seeing as everywhere in this godforsaken cave blends together for me, it's pretty nifty. Also, I refuse to believe that while entering this cave, there were no signs of danger. This place is literally filled to the brim with rodents, thugs, and demons. Anywho, I decided to continue my search for the exit on the bottom floor, which I had explored very little of up to this point. I then almost immediately died, so I retreated back to the stairs to rest some more. Turns out, I gained enough XP to level up. I even gained 4 bonus points to put into any of my stats, which naturally all went into strength. After searching and finding nothing of interest on the bottom floor, I then went back to the top floor and killed some bandit, which had lots of cool loot. I then spent about 10 more minutes mindlessly running past every enemy, going down every path, and checking the map multiple times until finally I stumbled upon the exit to the cave. However, the excitement of my newfound freedom was very quickly cut short by the nauseating movement of the sky over the horizon. I'm sure to a lot of people, this would not be an issue, but this bothered me so much that I immediately saved the game and then went and found a mod called Enhanced Sky. Which I guess I installed wrong because I loaded the game back up and the sky was pink, which unironically was an improvement. Anyway, fixed that, then quickly realized that I had no idea what to do next. After having spent half an hour fighting my way out of that cave, I had completely forgotten what that dang emperor had wanted me to do, so I didn't really have much of a goal. However, I figured if I just walked in a general direction, I was bound to find something of interest eventually, so I chose west and began walking. And after a couple of minutes of aimless travel and still not seeing anything, I figured it would be best to consult the map to see if there was anything of note nearby. What I quickly realized was the map I was looking at initially was just showing the various regions of the game, and if I wanted to see where I was, I needed to zoom in on Daggerfall itself, which apparently is just one of the many different locations in this game. And upon zooming in, I found out that in my couple minutes of walking, I had not moved a single pixel from where I started, as it was still saying I was at the Privateer's Hold, aka that stupid cave. But fortunately for me, only a single pixel to the south, there was a town. And having completely forgotten about the quest I was sent to this land to fulfill, I figured helping the locals would be a great way to get that guy's name out there. So I guess nobody is roaming the streets at night, because when I arrived at the town of Gothway Garden, there was nobody there to greet me. Which is fine, I get it. I get sleepy too. I tried entering one of the houses so I could introduce myself, only to find out that they lock their doors at night, which just tells me that these guys have some serious trust issues. And I don't know why, but out of pure curiosity, I wondered if I could get in the house by breaking down the door. To my astonishment, it actually worked! It was one of those moments when you're playing a game and you're pretty sure something's not going to work but you try it anyway. Sometimes it just works out. After exploring most of this remarkably barren house, I stumbled upon the homeowner, who surprisingly was not at all fazed by my presence. This is where I was introduced to Daggerfall's conversation system. Essentially, you have a bunch of predetermined things you can ask about, and you can choose to ask any of those things in a polite, normal, or blunt way. It's pretty cool and all, but I had no idea what to talk about, so I just asked her a few throwaway questions in a polite tone that did absolutely nothing for me. I then asked her about some dudes called the Crusaders, and she said she didn't know or care, and it hurt my feelings a bit. So I left her house, and I guess it was considered morning now because there were actually people out and about. And I figured they were bound to be a bit friendlier, so I started chatting. I found this one lady who seemed nice enough, and I asked her about this thing called the Order of Archay. She then said she wouldn't tell me because I was an Argonian. It took a lot of self-discipline to not retaliate. After that, I entered another house and found a woman with a very weird furniture layout, including a very strange corner chair setup. And that told me all I needed to know about her, so I left. At this point, I was making no progress, so I figured I'd ask someone if there was literally anything of note in this town. That's when I ran into a little boy by the name of Tristy Rick, and asked if there was a store anywhere in town. Tristy Rick then basically told me to shove off, because he was busy. No he wasn't. He had just been standing there. As a guest in this town, you would think he'd be eager to point me in the right direction. But no, Tristy Rick could not be bothered. Tristy Rick has chosen to withhold information from that guy. Tristy Rick is the master of his own destiny, and he is about to find out that all actions have consequences. Then I found out that I couldn't hurt him, and it made me really sad. After that, I kept asking various people if there was a store, but again, they were all pretty dismissive, so that didn't do a whole lot. I did find a happy camel though, so that was pretty cool. A while later, I tried talking to this one lady, but I guess I had accidentally switched to pickpocket mode and tried to rob her. It didn't work, but within like 3 seconds the guards were after me. Although to be honest, I don't know if that was the result of the failed pickpocket attempt, the breaking and entering, or the attempted murder. Hard to say really. They didn't really seem keen on talking it out though, so I just kinda made a run for it. Naturally, while I'm being pursued, I see the sign for a tavern. That would have been a great place to visit. And just like that, they successfully ran me out of the town of Gothway Garden. I would not be returning. After a few minutes, the guards finally quit following me, and I was free to take my helping hands elsewhere. Right outside of the town, I found an orc, and being frustrated by the events that just transpired, I decided to take my anger out on them. However, they almost immediately killed me, and I ran away with my tail tucked between my legs. Now once again on the verge of death, and having accomplished absolutely nothing, I decided to rest up a bit to heal off my recently acquired injuries before heading elsewhere. But of course that rest was interrupted by a giant green spider, and I died again. Luckily, I'd saved right before that, so I didn't lose any progress. After consulting the map, I learned that there was another town to the east, and headed that way until I reached the town of Burgley. This time around, I decided to skip talking to any of the residents and look for any buildings of interest, and not long after that, I happened upon the general store. No thanks to Tristy Rick! Now right from the jump, I was pretty confused on how to actually browse the wares of the store. When you click on the shop owner, you get the options to repair an item, talk to him, or sell stuff. So I figured talking to him must be how you buy things from him. But no, that's just how you talk to him like any other NPC. At a certain point, I was convinced that he must not be the shop owner and started looking for someone else. Well, it turns out that all you have to do to see what you can buy is actually click on the shelves. Now I would say, oh, that makes sense. Of course merchandise goes on the shelves. Where else would it be? But then I saw that the first item on the shelf was a whole horse, and all logic went out the window. Logical or not though, the horse had my attention, and I knew that that would be the perfect thing to speed up my travels. However, it turns out horses are expensive, and I didn't even have a quarter of the gold needed to buy it. So, I did what any soon-to-be hero in need of a noble steed would do, and I tried to steal it. In fact, I tried twice, and failed both times, and within seconds the guards were on me. Now cornered by the law, I decided it was best to turn myself in. Just kidding, I tried to steal it like 4 more times. It didn't go very well, and I ended up being tried for my crimes. I didn't really have much of a defense, so I just pled guilty and spent 3 nights in prison. 3 long nights that gave me a lot of time to reflect on what I had done and feel true remorse for all those that I had wronged. And I decided from that moment forward, I was going to live a selfless, honest life. I'm just kidding. I immediately went back to the store and tried to steal the horse again. I thought maybe if I crouched behind the shelf, the shop owner wouldn't see me and I could get away scot-free, but it didn't work. I got caught and went back to prison. At this point, I was so committed to stealing that horse that frankly I think it would be easier in this town's legal system to just let me have it. It was night now, so the door to the shop was locked, but thankfully I'd experienced getting past such obstacles. Since it was the middle of the night, the old man wasn't there to report me, and I managed to steal the horse and a wagon and escape with 0 effort. In fact, it was so easy that I actually broke back into the store to steal more stuff, including a new sword and this sick-ass robe that made me look like great value Dr. Doom. And of course on my way out the second time, the law had finally caught wind of my theft. But now saddled up with my own horse, they didn't have a chance of catching me. And as a thief in the night, I rode off into the shadows and away from Burgley. I would not be returning. Even though I was able to get around easier now, I couldn't really say I was happy with how things were going. My goal was to become a legendary hero with tales of heroics that sweeps across the land, and all that guy had done was become a fugitive in 2 different towns. Eager to find somewhere I could make a positive difference, I once again consulted the map. It was at this point that I realized that by clicking on the various locations on the map, that you could fast travel to pretty much any one, as long as you had the gold for it. I didn't have much gold, so I wasn't able to go very far, but I was able to go a few regions over and travel to the town of Weeping Oracle of Julianos. And as soon as I got there, I was informed that apparently someone had snuck a letter into my hand and then left without saying anything. Nothing bizarre about that. I then instantly forgot about the letter and made my way into the town. I was completely determined at this point to become a hero, so I began my search to find anyone in need of assistance. So I asked a whole bunch of different people if there was any work to be done, and they literally all told me there was none. Also, while exploring the town, I made the sudden realization that there weren't many different kinds of NPCs, and as soon as I noticed that, I was never able to unsee it. After not being able to hurt Tristy Rick earlier, I had just assumed that all NPCs were invincible, and I would be able to just swing at them for fun. Turns out this only applies to NPCs inside buildings. And once again I found myself on the wrong side of the law, and was forced to flee the town. I would not be returning. I thought maybe it was time to try somewhere besides a town, and decided to check out a dungeon called the Greenham Vaults. The outside of it was completely surrounded by graves, which was maybe a sign to stay away, but I just took it as an opportunity to do some horse parkour. Which honestly was way more fun than the dungeon itself, because besides 2 rats, a bat, and some gold, there was literally nothing of interest in there. The entire dungeon was made up of 4 empty rooms connected by a hallway. I'm sure there's gotta be something hidden away in there, but I had no idea where or what it would be, so I just left. Well, I somehow accomplished even less in there than I did the towns, so I figured back to the towns I go. This time I decided on the Lucky Giant Pub, which I thought was a single tavern, but it seemed to be a whole town, which had an actual tavern known as the Pig and Cat, which I gotta say, something about the way everyone was looking at me didn't make me feel welcome to be there. And that feeling was correct, because apparently the people there were extremely racist and didn't want to give me work because I was an Argonian. I was then sadly reminded that they were completely invincible. How unfortunate. However, I realized up to this point I'd only been asking for things in a polite tone, so I decided to try being blunt, and a kid there gave in and told me that there might be work at the Silver Mug, which I assumed was another tavern. He even gave me directions to it. Now that boy has a bright future, unlike Tristy Rick. So I made my way over to the Silver Mug and found the guy the boy had told me to talk to. His name was Ed Y. Weir Herthing. I think that's how you pronounce that. And he said that his cousin Vanin Geierston, I think that's how you pronounce that, was extremely sick and only had a month to live before she perished, and told me if I could cure her before she died, he would be grateful. He even gave me 20 gold and said that he would give me 49 more if I could save her. Oh snap, is that a quest? I finally have a purpose! Without hesitation, I accepted and prepared to finally get that guy's name out there and become a true hero. On my way out though, I accidentally clicked on some lady, and for some reason she was talking mad smack, and asked if I had said something, and I said yeah, cause I'm not a coward. She then asked if I was going to use my weapon on her, and frankly, I didn't like the way she was speaking to me, so I said yeah, again. Then she challenged me to a duel, and even though I had a time-sensitive quest to complete, I was not about to be disrespected like this, so I accepted. She said meet her back at the Pig and Cat Tavern in 6 hours, and so I headed that way, ready to put this absolute clown in her place. Once I got there, I rented a room on the 2nd floor and took a 6-hour power nap. After I woke up, I made my way back down the stairs to dunk on this loser, only to be met by some dude with a staff. Apparently, she never actually intended to fight me herself and just sent one of her friends to do her dirty work instead. So just to recap, she was the one who challenged me to a duel, this was her idea, and she didn't show up. What a dork. Not that it mattered though, because her friend went down nearly instantly. I would feel bad that he got dragged into this, but maybe he should have made better life decisions and associated with better people. With that beef taken care of, it was now time to head to the Perpetual Relic of Julianos and find Vanin. It was at this point I remembered the letter that was forcibly given to me earlier and decided maybe it was worth a look. And as it turns out, it was actually for the main quest, and I was supposed to go meet with an agent of the Emperor. Oh yeah, the Emperor! Well, that didn't matter anymore, because I had already agreed to cure Vanin, and a hero never goes back on his word. So, I made my way over to the Perpetual Relic of Julianos and began my search for Vanin, which did not go well because everyone in this town is trash. For no reason whatsoever, they all just refused to help me no matter what tone I spoke to them in. It was at this point that I started thinking dumping all of my stat points into strength instead of some conversational stats might be the problem, but that would involve taking accountability, so I dismissed it. I searched for Vanin for over 20 minutes, inside every house, every shop, talked to every person, and still had no earthly idea where she could be. Eventually I went to a house with some nude woman that I had already checked earlier, but realized I hadn't checked the attic. But as I thought, the attic was empty. She was in the ceiling. But whatever, that doesn't matter though, because I found her and was now able to help. She thanked me for coming all this way to help her, and she even told me a way to cure her. All I had to do was find the healer Lysausa greenhouse in Eastville Dairy and get her assistance. Now I have to find another lady? In a different town? You know what? It's super inconvenient, but hey, nobody said being a hero would be easy. I made my way over to Eastville Dairy in hopes that finding this lady would be a bit easier than the last, but nope, of course this place was less of a town and more of a full-on city. I spent so long searching for this healer. I asked so many different people for help, and they almost all shooed me away no matter how I spoke to them. The ones that didn't tried to get me to go on a different quest. Where were these people earlier when I had no idea what to do? And I searched almost every building, including multiple shops, all of which were useless to me. Eventually I found some people that would at least give me the general direction she was in relation to where we were, but when there's this many buildings, I need more than a general direction, bro. After a while, the only thing keeping me going was this puppy that was chilling outside. Every time I saw them, it gave me the strength to keep going. 30 minutes later, and I was still no closer to finding this healer than when I arrived. The only reason I eventually found her is because I learned that if you find someone that gives you general directions, you can keep asking them for help, and eventually they'll just mark where you need to go on your map. It took me way too long to figure this out. But with her marked on the map, I was finally able to find and talk to Lysausa Greenhouse. She said that Vanin had been inflicted with Wizard Bane, whatever the hell that is, and would sell me a talisman to cure it for only 20 gold, which luckily was already provided to me earlier by Ed Y. Weir. So I bought the talisman from Lysausa, said my goodbyes to the people who had been oh so kind to me, and exited Eastville Dairy. I would not be returning. And so, I journeyed back to the perpetual relic of Julianos, made my way to Vannon, and cured her with the talisman. She was overjoyed, and even paid me the other 49 gold that Ed had promised me, so I didn't even need to return to him. With the quest complete and my purpose fulfilled, I decided it was time to journey to new lands to find more people that might need my bravery. I had done it. Against all odds, I had saved a life and become a true hero. Were there a few roadblocks in the way? Sure. But at the end of the day, being a hero is about perseverance and doing what you think is right, regardless of what anyone else thinks. They might call you a thief, or even a murderer, but those are just titles given by cowards who are too scared to act. And I'm sure the tale of how that guy saved the young maiden Vannon Gyriston from a timely demise will be told for generations to come. So ends our tale, as our hero heads to the seas, ready to find his next adventure. But of course, the game just couldn't give me a break, and I got jumped by a little purple dragon demon. It was pretty easy to kill, but I mean, come on, can this game chill for like 5 minutes? So anyway, now that I've played it, do I think Daggerfall is the best Elder Scrolls game? Frankly, I don't think I played this game in an intelligent enough way to have a meaningful answer. But what I can definitely say is the animals are cool, and Tristy Rick sucks.